What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Parabellum Podcast. Thanks for watching. I'm Sean, owner of Parabellum Strength and Fitness. And today I want to address a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I talk a lot about it, youth athletes. Earlier this week, I was scrolling through my social media, and of course, I have a lot of other coaches on my social media because I'm not afraid to admit if I see something that makes sense, I'm going to start doing it with my youth athletes. The problem with social media is that unless you know what you're looking at, you're going to see a lot of garbage and then you're going to put a lot of garbage into your programmings. And unless you really know what you're doing, you are going to be influenced by people that you don't need to be influenced by. So, the video that I'm going to talk about and the video that I made, the TikTok video about, a coach was having a young athlete somewhere 10, 11, 12 in that age range do successive high hurdle hops and A skips. Now, this youth athlete was doing them extremely well. I never want to take away from a youth athlete because everyone's experience level is different and everyone's capability at that age is different. I'll get into age here in a moment. But this coach captioned the video by saying, if your youth athlete can't do these things, they don't need to be lifting weights. No, absolutely not. Both of those movements, an A skip to the untrained eye just looks like someone skipping. And to the untrained eye would say, well, that's just nonsense. How's that going to help them become more athletic? Well, it helps improve rate of force development, number one, which is how hard you can strike the ground. Number two, it also improves hip cycling, leg cycling. And if you're doing it properly, it's going to help improve your arm cycling. People don't realize how important arm cycling is to speed mechanics. Topic for another day. And then high hurdle hops is a fairly high impact plyometric. Plyometric, you're trying to improve how your rate of force development, of course, which is going to be how high you can jump, how hard you can strike the ground, things like that. And that all goes back to Newton's third law of motion. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So the harder you strike the ground, the harder the ground strikes back, which propels you either upwards, forwards, backwards, laterally, either one of those directions. The high hurdle hops, though, when I say that's high impact, the impact part is where you come back down to the ground. And there is energy from the ground put back into the foot, the ankle, the knees, the hips, and ultimately the lower back. There is a certain point where your body weight and just doing those movements, you're going to plateau. When you plateau, you have to get stronger in order to strike the ground harder. For youth athletes, it's important not only to do those things are very important. I'm not saying don't do those things. And I'm not even saying don't do those things before you lift weights. I'm actually saying those should be the warm up for lifting weights because it's priming the type 2 muscle fibers to go move weight. But what a lot of these coaches do is they prey on the ignorance of the average parent. Everybody gets offended by that word ignorance, and I'll just explain it. It's just what you don't know. And you can't help what you don't know unless you go out and learn it. And the average parent is just too busy to go out and learn how to make their kid more athletic. That's why people like me exist. We coach it. But you have to be careful with what coach you choose, just like you have to be careful with what doctor you choose, what mechanic you choose. You've got to get someone who isn't afraid to push the limit, but also understands there is a limit. These coaches prey on that ignorance by saying they shouldn't be lifting weights. Well, that's a really broad stroke right there. And immediately it conjures into the mind a 10-year-old with 500-pound barbell on their back. No, kids need strength training. You can do a Google search on youth strength training and come up with the National Institutes of Health, the Mayo Clinic, very well respected medical organizations that say there's nothing wrong with youth training strength. You have a window of approximately around 3 to 11 of what's called motor development. That's where kids learn how to move. If they're not taught how to move properly after the age of 11, you're going to have a real hard time making that individual into an athlete unless they just naturally come by it themselves, which is pretty rare. We've all seen that kid that's playing sports and he's around 12 and he looks stiff as a board. Well, because his motor development more than likely consisted of a couch and an Xbox controller or sitting on the floor doing absolutely nothing. For me, as a drill sergeant, when we'd get a class of about 240, we would send 40% of that class, either recycle them to a following class or send them home for stress fractures in their lower extremities because they didn't have any strength training when they were young. For my generation, we didn't have all these developments. We didn't have the science to back it up when we were kids. Why? Because the field of kinesiology has only really developed since the 1970s. So if you're like me and you were born in 1982, we'll just say that there was only about 12 years of research into this field. And here we are, kids. So kinesiology is a relatively new field. Exercise science, relatively new field. But if you're my age or older, we didn't get any proper strength training. We were just out riding bikes and falling out of trees. So we developed a little bit more. But if you look at freakish high school athletes now, I guarantee you they didn't start when they were 12. And that's not to say that genetics doesn't play a very large role in your freakish high school athletes. They do. Genetics play a large role in your maximum potential for sports. That's another important thing for parents to keep in mind, but that shouldn't stop you as a parent from providing your child with every opportunity to be successful if they love sports. Notice how I'll caveat that. If they love sports. Don't try to push them into it unless you started when they were babies. I know for my child, I started him, my 5-year-old, I started him. He had a barbell and a ball in his crib the moment he was born. His first word was football. Second word was touchdown. That's no joke. If you don't believe me, please comment and I'll have my wife jump on here and she can tell you because I think it hurt her feelings more than it did mine. I was I was thrilled. But anyway, and my 5-year-old's gifted, very gifted. But I'm doing everything I can to develop those gifts. Kids need to be taught how to run. There shouldn't be a fear in strength training your kids from a young age. If you don't know how to do that, get someone who does. You can go to my social media. You'll see my 5-year-old doing perfect goblet squats. If you notice kids up until the age of about 6 or 7, they sit into a perfect ass to grass squat. And then as they get older, they lose that ability. Why? Because it's not trained. And most parents hear this, keep your kid in sport year round, they'll get better at it. That's not true. It's not true at all. If you know who Dr. James Andrews is, and if you don't, do a simple Google search. He did a podcast with John Smoltz talking. John Smoltz is a Hall of Fame pitcher, about how many Tommy John surgeries he's doing on kids ages 11 to 14. And he told Smoltz, you've got parents that keep their kids playing baseball year round. There's no off season. And I'm seeing all these surgeries because there is no off season. And then he says, and there's no strength training. You can't have a kid play sports year round and expect them to get better without strength training. Now, strength training here again, most people think, well, that means you're wanting my kid to squat 500 pounds. He's only 8. No. I'm wanting to teach them how to squat properly, how to do a proper lunge, how to do a proper bench press, a proper overhead press. And I'm not trying to turn them into power lifters, just trying to make sure that they grow strong and they have proper mechanics. They understand how to place their feet for a squat, for a deadlift, for a bench even, because your feet play a major role in your bench press. Everything's got to start from the ground up. I have my youth athletes do towel toe scrunches. You place a towel underneath your foot and you just scrunch your toes. Why? Because people forget about making their feet strong. My youth athletes, we start every session sitting on the ground, working arm cycling. Why? Because your arm cycling plays a major role in your ability to produce speed when you sprint. If you don't believe me, as soon as you're done listening to this, or pause it right now, go outside, hold your arms to your side, and sprint without moving them. See how well that works out. And I could go into a whole long reason why, but I'll save that for another episode. When it comes to strength training, you're only going to be able to do so many hurdle hops and so many box jumps before your potential tops out, because you're not strengthening the muscles to produce more force. You have no tension. Your body weight can only create so much tension. So that strength training for youth can take the form of bands. You start out with body weight. You move to bands. Then you move to free weights or machines, then free weights, depending on how that youth athlete demonstrates their understanding of how their body works. And that's different for everyone. It's different for adults. You should train every person the same way or with the same philosophy. I'm going to see where you are, and then we'll go from there. And if you're at the very bottom, we're going to start out with just your body weight, and we'll build from there. Kids, even more so, try to keep that perfect squat form. Their knees, their ankles, their hips, their lower back will thank you as they get older. Because also strength training is great for their mobility. But we're all afraid of that word or that term, strength training, because of ignorance. And then you get coaches that make bold, broad stroke statements like that because it's marketing. My way is the only way. It's the best way. Come to me. Come to me. No. Don't be fooled by that. As a parent, I have 3 boys. They all play sports. You can go to my social media and see, where I train them and how I train them. There are a lot of cone drills. There's a lot of medicine ball work. There's a lot of sled work. There's a lot of goblet squats. I have a 13-year-old. I have yet to put a barbell on his back because he hasn't shown me that he can do a proper goblet squat. So if he can't do a proper goblet squat, which is the most simplistic form of a squat that we can do other than body weight, if he can't do that, why would I graduate him to a barbell? We need to look at training youth athletes like we do their sports. I said this in my video. I didn't put my 5-year-old, he started playing baseball a year ago, so he was 4. He started out with T-ball. We don't start any 4-year-old out with kids pitching to him. Another 4-year-old, because they don't possess the motor development or the biomechanics yet to pitch accurately. Looking at it from a hitter's standpoint, they don't possess the motor development or biomechanics to swing a bat at a pitch. So we start them out on a tee. Why would I start out a kid with a barbell in the weight room if they're at a tee for baseball? Once they've demonstrated, or more accurately, once they've aged out of T-ball, then we move them to coach pitch. Then we move them to or machine pitch, depending on what region you live in. And then we move them to kid pitch. So they graduate, and they do it by age. But without the proper training, you see a lot of kids that have no business being in a batter's box for kid pitch because they haven't been trained. So the same thing, same attitude with strength training. But if we want to see those really cool cone drills and hurdle hop drills that we see everywhere, if we want to see those get better, we've got to get them stronger. And I will guarantee you that if you strength train your kid, you will see their confidence rise and their performance. So we'll yell at a kid in a batter's box, swing the bat harder. Problem with that is the harder you swing and the faster you try to move, the less accurate you are. So when we are screaming at a kid, swing the bat harder, hit the ball harder, odds are they're going to miss the ball in the first place because they're pulling their head out of the swing. But if we train that kid to get stronger, the bat's going to move faster naturally. But that took place in the weight room. The preparation for a sports season comes in the weight room or on the field doing sprint mechanics and getting faster there. And then it's translated to the game. My favorite sport, football. I've coached it now for going on 7 years. And my philosophy has changed the longer I've coached. I don't yell at my kid to hit harder. I get them stronger. Because the stronger I get them, the more force they can produce into the ground, the better they can wrap up. They're going to hit harder naturally. They're going to move faster naturally. They're going to move better. I'm going to speak on those cone drills. I do them. I do them with my youth athletes. I have my youth athletes sprint. But with each one, I'm videoing it and I'm talking to them about their mechanics. Because if you're not doing it properly, if you're not improving the way you move, you're not going to reach the end result of getting faster. And if you're not moving the correct way, which differs by each person just a little bit, you're increasing the risk of injury. So you can do all the cone drills you want. You can do all the competitive sprint drills that you want, but if you're not coaching them how to move better, you're just spinning wheels. And if you're a parent taking your kid to a coach who doesn't take the time to break down that youth athlete's movement and teach them how to do it better, you're just wasting your money. If you're taking your kid to a coach that just has your kid do cone drills, then you're wasting your money. Because they're not really a strength and conditioning coach. They're a babysitter. Now, that's not to say that your child won't improve a little bit. But me personally, I wouldn't take my child to anyone just to improve a little bit. I want to find the person that's going to try to pull the best out of my child. And I know these are 3-minute videos. You can't put an entire strength training program in a 3-minute video. I'm aware of that. But as a coach, if you're not showing every little thing that you're doing at some point in time, and I understand the trade secrets behind it. There's no real secret. There's just different exercises. Then you're not really coaching. You want to advertise, show the results you're getting. I do that. I'm not afraid of people seeing what I do and saying, well, I'm going to copy that. I hope they do. I have no problem admitting, just like my buddy Gary said, he goes, I have no problem copying other people. If it works, I have no problem. Because the last time I checked, there was no patent on any exercise. That's why there's different names for all of them. A good strength coach, a lot of stuff, unless it's in the weight room, a lot of stuff a coach is making up. A lot of those cone drills based on experience. In the weight room, there's very little that you can make up. And because it all starts with, can you properly brace your core? Can you properly retract your scapula? Have we done enough of the minimal, meaning body weight stuff to get it into a youth athlete's head of how to engage those muscles? Are we teaching how to engage those muscles? So even body weight is strength training, but it's got to be the proper strength training. I'd rather see my youth athletes do 5 perfect push-ups than have them do 100 imperfect push-ups, because those 100 imperfect push-ups are teaching them the wrong mechanics. I don't look for my youth athletes to leave a training session exhausted. I look for, are they moving better? Do they feel like they're moving better? Are they understanding what I'm saying, and can they apply it? I rate my success as a strength coach for youth athletes on, hey, how'd you do in your game the other night? I've got a young lady, she's 13, stud. I mean, stud. Trap bar deadlift at age 13, 185 pounds. And this is not a big girl. And does it with perfect form. Perfect. Plays travel softball. Comes into me uh, 2 weeks ago. Coach, what's up? So excited. I hit 2 home runs last night and pitched a no-hitter. No kidding. It's the first time I've ever hit a home run. Thank you. That's success as a strength coach. Because the question is what you're doing translating to the field or to the court, whatever sport it is? We're not, I take Mike Boyle's approach to thing. If you don't know Mike Boyle, go look him up. Mike Boyle, strength and conditioning. His approach to thing is, we want athletes who are good at lifting weights, but the lifting weights makes them better athletes. I'm not looking to create weightlifters or power lifters. I'm looking to use the weights to make them better on the field. If you have a youth athlete and you're not training them, or you're not getting them trained to get stronger and produce that force, then they're not reaching full potential. So I encourage you as a parent, don't just drop your kid off at these places. Sit down, watch it, video it, ask questions, go to the coach, ask questions. Ask questions more than just how they doing. Something I do as a coach once every 2 months. I go 2 months because of timing with youth. I do an assessment: vertical jump, broad jump, flying 10-yard sprint, push-ups. If the athlete has demonstrated the ability to do so, a trap bar deadlift, a dead hang from a pull-up bar to test grip strength and upper back muscular endurance. Those are all things. A plank. That's my assessment. And I do that and once every 2 months to see if the kids are improving in that regard. Are your coaches doing that? And are they sharing that information with you? Or is it just a hour and a half babysitting session and you're dumping money into it? And I understand times are hard, but I'm also going to say you get what you pay for. If you're paying $50 a month for it, you can expect you're getting $50. That's it. Because no coach in his right mind is going to sit there for $50 a month. You can't make a living off of that, and this is a business. Sad fact of it. But get your kids stronger. Now, here's the thing behind that. As parents, we all look at our kids and think that they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. If you don't, you got a problem. I know I look at my boys and, I think they're just amazing. They're wonderful because they're mine and I love them. But I also know the odds of them playing college sports are fairly low. As a matter of fact, only 2% of high school athletes get a scholarship to college. 2%. And I know there's the propensity for parents to go, well, if there's only 2%, then I'm just going to let it play out naturally. Why spend my money on it? Here's my answer to that. That 2% is not predetermined. It's not. It's going to take a lot of it is going to be genetics. Are you genetically more endowed with type 2 muscle fibers? Meaning you have the propensity to be bigger, faster, and stronger. Well, not bigger, but definitely faster and stronger. Are you really big and tall and can move? Yeah, that's all going to play a large factor in it. Not saying it isn't. But we can look in the NFL right now and Deuce McAllister, or not Deuce McAllister, Deuce Vaughn, sorry, running back for the Dallas Cowboys, 5'5", 5'5", squats over 600 pounds, and he's playing in the NFL. So never say never. About 2 years ago, I trained a young man out in California. He was 14. He's 16 now. His mom, very involved, wanted him to have a trainer so that he would be ready for football. I won't say she was unrealistic, but she was unrealistic. I'll say that. His dad, on the other hand, called me, said, "Hey, look, I know where this is going." I said, "Okay." And he said, "Please don't think of me as a bad father." And I said, "Well, unless you're beating him or putting him down, I won't. So let's hear it." And he said, "I think that he's going to top out. He may get a few starts as a junior and senior playing football, but he's not gifted enough to start at the high schools that he's going to." And I don't like putting out any kind of personal information on my clients. So I'll just say that they are football factories in California. He said, it's just not going to happen. I said, okay, so what's the motivation to have a trainer? And he said, because I want him to have every opportunity. I want him to know that I did everything I could within my power. And he said, I don't have the knowledge and I don't have the time to gain the knowledge on how to train him. But I want him to know I did everything within my power so that he could reach his full potential. And then if he goes way beyond that, awesome. No one will be more excited than me. But at the very least, as he gets older, maybe this takes hold and becomes a lifestyle for him, and he's a healthy adult. And I had never had that conversation with this dad, but I tell my boys that all the time. I tell them all the time, look, there's not an expectation for you to play college sports. I didn't play college sports. Your mom did. My wife's a stud. My wife played soccer at Vanderbilt. I'll put out some of her information because, well, she's mine. I can do that. So we have one D1 athlete in the house. But I tell my boys, that's not an expectation. It's a hope if that's what you want. But if that's what you want, you got to put in the work. But what I want is this to become a lifestyle for you, and it's just part of your everyday routine so that you're healthy. And this dad said to me my exact philosophy. And to which I said, hey, man, nothing wrong with that. That's not going to change the way I coach him or anything else. I appreciate that. And yes, you are a good dad because you're looking at what he is when he's 35. And he said, yes, exactly. I don't want my son to be weak or to be broken at age 35. I want him to look around and go, I'm enjoying life. When I was a drill sergeant, I've said this before, we would send 40% of a class either we would do what's called recycling them, which means put them back into a class because they had stress fractures in their lower extremities. Or we'd just end up, hey, you're out of the Army. Your body cannot physically handle it. Because at my age, in the 80s, we grew up falling out of trees, jumping, doing things like that. They don't do that anymore. So even if, those kids, they grew up, they didn't have that motor development. They didn't have that rough and tumble lifestyle that created durability. So they weren't capable of handling it like my generation. Now, the drawback of that is my generation also didn't have the education. When I was in high school, I got about 10 minutes of instruction on how to squat, and that was that. Go squat a bunch of weight. Why aren't you getting stronger? Why aren't you getting better? Form wasn't good. But I can literally survive falling 20 feet. I know because I've done that. I wouldn't suggest testing that. So there has to be some level of common sense in this. And we have to desire more than them just to be the next Peyton Manning, the next Derrick Henry, whatever. We have to be honest about it. And there has to be a larger goal. But that shouldn't cause us to say as parents, no, we're not going to provide that opportunity for them. And what we should be doing is looking at that person. Go take a look at some YouTube videos. You've got time. Go take a look at YouTube videos of what collegiate strength and conditioning coaches do with their athletes. I had a young lady. She's a track athlete. Her stepfather is the high school track coach. To which I asked, why are you bringing her to me? And he goes, because I'm the coach there. I don't have time to get her stronger. I don't have time to break down every bit of her mechanics because I've got 30 some athletes. And even though she's my kid, especially since she's my kid, I can't take that time with her one-on-one. And also, she doesn't listen to me. As kids get older, they're not going to listen to you. They're going to think they have it best. But he stayed. He watched my training with her. He comes up to me afterwards and he says, I have told her she needs to listen to everything that you're doing. He ran track at, I believe it was Texas Tech. And he said, I've told her you need to do everything this dude says. And I said, well, I appreciate that. Why is that? He goes, because you're doing exactly what my college strength and conditioning coach did with me. He said, there's some new wrinkles in there. He said, but I hear my strength and conditioning coach every time you speak. The way you're telling her to place her feet, bring her knees up, the way you're telling her to brace her core, the way that if she doesn't do it right, you just regress it. You slow it back down. He said, I've told her this guy's going to make you successful. Just do what he says. That's pretty high endorsement. I'll take that. I'll take that because I know that 2% statistic already. The number of people who participated in collegiate sports is very, very low. So if I get a collegiate athlete telling me that they're telling their kid, do exactly what he says, I'm on the mark. Now, of course, yes, this is me advertising myself. There are going to be other coaches that tell you, no, don't bring him to him. Of course there are. I'm okay with that. That's fine. This is your choice. Bring your kid to me or don't bring your kid to me. That's fine. I'm not going to be upset either way. But find that coach that understands these statistics and they're trying to get your kid there. Now, I'm going to bring up that statistic. And that's a hard word. I don't know why. Okay. This is the NCAA recruiting facts. College sports offer student athletes opportunities to learn, compete, concede. Yep. Blah, blah, blah. So in Division I schools, this is across all Division I schools. That's your University of Texas, Texas A&M, University of Alabama. Those are Division I schools. 173,500 or 173,500 student athletes spread over 346 colleges and universities. 53% of all student athletes receive some level of athletics aid, meaning they're getting some kind of financial aid to help pay for their college. That doesn't mean full rides because each college only has so many full athletic scholarships to give out. So those that don't get those full scholarships, they're getting a small amount of their school paid for, whether it just be books or, some kind of grant or worse, loans. The 2012 graduation success rate was 81%. At the end of the day, 2% of all high school athletes are going to go play college sports. How many of those 2% do you think are making it to the professional level? If it's just 2% for college, I would say cut that number by 3/4 for professional athletes. Now, that's not to say, baseball, hockey, you got kids coming right out of high school that get drafted and go into the minors, but they're in the minors for quite some time. So it's not like they're making millions right off the bat. But 81% graduating, that's the goal. Get that piece of paper. It says you're educated and qualified for a job. Does it mean that you are? Probably not. Average number of sports. You got 18 sports at a Division I school. Average percentage of the student body participating in sports, 6%. Still pretty small. Then you go to Division II, smaller school. You only got 109,100 student athletes there, spread out over 300 colleges and universities with 15 sports. 14% participate. So you get a little bit higher percentage, but you have less students, less colleges, and you have less sports. And you have a lower academic, or you have a lower graduation rate there. And then Division III, super small, but you got more student athletes and you got more colleges and universities. It means you have more opportunities there. And you have the highest success rate of graduation. You got the same number of sports, and you have more people participating in sports in Division III. So for all of you youth athletes that might see this, that it's Division I or bust, good luck. Division III ain't a bad option for you. So as we're looking at that, out of the 2% that make it there, we've got around 500,000. That's just me doing quick math. Top end 500,000 student athletes. Here, I'll do the math for you real quick. I need a calculator because, well, I can't do that math in my head. And of course, these are not, anytime you see even numbers, you know it's a rough estimate. All right, I was close. 466,100 student athletes. And you figure over 1 million high school seniors every year. That's pretty low. It's pretty low. What do we want to? And then I'll pull up resistance training. Look, resistance training among youth athletes, safety, efficacy, injury prevention effects. Now, this is where I disagree with the National Institutes of Public Health, or because, and this is PubMed, this is about as scientific as you can get. This website right here. This is about as scientific as you can get. These folks research this all day, every day, year in, year out. This is going to be as scientific as you can get with them. I disagree with injury prevention. I disagree with that term. It's misleading. There is nothing you can do to prevent your child from getting injured. There's things you can do to reduce the risk of injury, such as strength training, such as having an off-season strength program so that they get stronger, they get faster, they learn they learn proper biomechanics. Bio meaning life, mechanics meaning that's just basically the way we move. They improve those. That reduces the risk of injury. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I'll drop the link in the description of the podcast. And it's going to have, but I will say this, current research findings indicate a relatively low risk of injury in children and adolescents who follow age-appropriate resistance training guidelines, which include qualified supervision and instruction. I'm going to tell you this right now. Qualified supervision and instruction does not mean former D3 athlete. Those pieces of paper on somebody's wall, they at the very least mean that that person had to sit through some classes, and somehow by osmosis, they probably picked up something about how to train people. Even if they slept through all of it, they at least had to do the reading to pass the test to get the piece of paper. I'm not saying the piece of paper is the end all be all. I'm not saying there's not great trainers out there without the piece of paper. But I will say the piece of paper does mean something. So if you can't find qualifications on somebody's wall, what lets you know that they're qualified? Because they played sports all their life? That doesn't mean they're good coaches and good trainers. That doesn't mean they know what they're doing. That just means they're doing what they always did. And that may not work for your kid. So look for those qualifications. But you saw it right there. Very low risk of injury. That's what I do with my kids. I make sure that training is a low risk of injury. Do I know that there's the possibility of them getting injured? Yes. But if I'm going to take my 10-year-old, my 13-year-old, my 5-year-old hasn't played tackle yet, but if they're going to go out there and play tackle football, and I'm going to scream at them to hit harder, then I'm definitely going to make sure that training replicates what they're doing on the field. And I can't allow my concern of, this might get them hurt, to override getting them better. Greatness does not come without risks. And if I'm going to put them out there and allow another human being to hit them at full speed, I want to prepare them as best as I can, which means get them stronger, because I want their bones to be more dense, so there's less likelihood of them breaking. I want them to have the muscle mass to help protect those bones. I want them to have the tension or the tendon tension and the joint stiffness, the right amount of joint stiffness, so that those don't get damaged, as well as ligaments. Forgot that one. But I also understand there's that possibility that they break an arm playing football. But I'm doing everything I can to reduce that risk. Cone drills don't reduce that risk. Lifting weights does. I'm going to leave you with that. So if you have a youth athlete that you want trained, if you are willing to take the time to go to the gym with them, read their training program, supervise, then by all means, contact me at 682-326-7242. That's my business line. And I can train them remotely. If you're in Southeast Texas, call that number. Let's get that young person better, because you can only rely on their natural abilities so far. That's only going to take them so far. They're going to have to learn proper mechanics at some point in time. They're going to have to get stronger at some point in time. And the sooner you do it, the better. That is a fact of life. Try teaching a 16-year-old to clean their room every day. Try it. If it's the first time they've ever been taught, you're going to have a whole bunch of headaches getting them to do that. But if you had started when they were 4, a little bit different story. Now it's a habit. It's easier. That is just everything in life. I've got a 5-year-old who pushes a 140-pound sled down the street. He had his own toy barbell set when he was 1. And he was out in the gym with me replicating power cleans and squats. I've got a 13-year-old that moves that 140-pound sled sprinting doing it and looks at me and says, "Can we put more weight on it?" Because he's been watching me do it since he was 6. I've got a 10-year-old that moves that 140-pound sled. He has to slow himself down because it's age appropriate. It's age appropriate. And I'll say it, and God protect them. I plead the blood of Jesus over them. My kids don't get injured. That doesn't mean that the possibility isn't there, but they don't get injured. My kids may not ever play sports in college, but they're not going to break. There's got to be a bigger picture in it. Odds are you don't have the next Pat Mahomes. You may, but odds are no, you don't. But what do you want that kid to be? Do you want them to have a better quality of life than you? You want them to be healthy as they get older? Do you want them to be able to look you in the eye when they're adults and go, I never played college sports. I didn't make my childhood dream come true of playing in the majors or the NFL. But you did everything you could as a parent to make sure that I reached my full potential. And I thank you for it. I appreciate that, Mom and Dad. I can tell you as a parent, my kids looking at me and saying that, I'm done. Lord, go ahead and take me home. I've done my job. I've done my job. I gave them every opportunity. And they recognize it. That's the best part of it. So I gave you the number. Please give it a call. We'll see if we're the right fit. I by no means say I'm the right fit for everybody. And I by no means say that every client is the right client for me. But let's have a conversation and let's see where we're going. If you call me, I'd almost guarantee that you are the right fit because you've listened to this and you picked up the phone and went, yep, that's the guy I want training my kid. Or even, yep, that's the guy I want training me. So, at any rate, I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it very much. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Please remember that Jesus is Lord. None of this, at the end of the day, none of this really matters without him. And it doesn't really matter in comparison to what he's given us, which is salvation. He's given us the ability to do these things, make the most of it. Again, I appreciate it. Thank you. Remember, Chronicles 15, 2 Chronicles 15:7, be strong. Do not let your hands be weak, for the Lord shall reward the work of your hands. You guys have a great day. I'll see you next week.